Today, we're presenting the final report from the independent investigation into the small animal transfer that occurred on August 7th, 2023. As we previously shared, this investigation was launched after the HSSA board was made aware of concerns regarding the status of over 300 small animals from employees, the public, and the media. The board hired an independent outside party to investigate these concerns, as well as allegations against HSSA and its former management team. The scope of this investigation was to determine factors that drove the decision to approve a request in July 2023 from our sister organization, the San Diego Humane Society, to help with its need to adopt out a large number of small animals in its care. This investigation also focused on understanding the timeline of events as they related to the selection of the purported rescue to which the small animals were sent by HSSA, and to learn the details of what relevant HSSA employees knew and when they knew it. Today, our investigator, Terry Flores, owner of Options and Resolutions Consulting, will present a summary of her investigation, findings, and recommendations. A full copy of the report will be emailed to each of you following this news conference. Following Terry's presentation, I will speak to the report's recommendations and review what actions the board has taken and will take to hold accountable those responsible for this tragedy and to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Our interim CEO, Beth Morrison, will then discuss efforts underway in the areas of administration and operations in further support of Terry's recommendations and otherwise. At this time, I'll turn things over to Terry.
Thank you, Robert. This report presents the findings of the investigation into the small animal transfer incident that occurred on August 7, 2023. On August 31, the Humane Society of Southern Arizona, HSSA, Board of Directors became aware of a transfer of over 300 small animals, originally from the San Diego Humane Society, SDHS, from HSSA to a purported rescue group in Maricopa County. The board later became aware of serious concerns regarding the small animals and their fate through the efforts of HSSA staff and community members, as well as escalating allegations against HSSA, its CEO, Steve Farley, and the COO, Christian Gonzalez. On September 26, the board resolved to hire an independent outside party to investigate the allegations and concerns. This investigator was retained that same date. This investigation was commissioned as an internal workplace investigation into HSSA's decision to accept a July 2023 request from SDHS to assist with the adoptive placement of a large number of small animals. The scope of this investigation also focused on determining the timeline and the sources of relevant decisions, and to uncover the details of HSSA staff knowledge and actions related to it. To clarify, this was an employer-driven workplace investigation intended to follow the facts in an effort to determine the fate of the small animals. This was not a criminal investigation, which involves trained, certified members of law enforcement and those conducted by licensed private investigators. Employer-driven investigations are established by organizational policy and procedure related to the employer-employee relationship. The investigation intake began immediately after September 26 and continued through November 11, 2023. Over 63 hours of interviews and documents review were completed before the report was first sent to the full board for its consideration on November 22. On November 28, the investigator discussed the report and answered the board's questions during its monthly meeting and while in executive session. There were 17 interviews conducted. Those interviewed included the CEO, and COO of both HSSA and SDHS, as well as staff, volunteers, community members, and Colton Jones. Some individuals were interviewed multiple times based on information received from other sources. Members of the public were encouraged to reach out with any information that would help with the investigation. Interviews were conducted in person, by Zoom, telephone, email, and via text messaging. Timeline summary. On or about July 10, 2023, a request was made by SDHS to HSSA for the transfer of a large number of small pets, including rats, rabbits, and guinea pigs. HSSA's COO confirmed HSSA would accept the transfer, noting he had reached out to rescues and noting a rescue had agreed to accept the animals. HSSA's former CEO knew of the transfer no later than July 26 in correspondence that occurred between him and the SDHS CEO. The exact number of animals received by HSSA on August 7, 2023 shifted from time to time, but SDHS verified the number sent was 323. HSSA did not count the animals upon their arrival in Tucson. On or about August 28, HSSA's COO names Trevor Jones and the Chiricahua Livestock and Animal Rescue as the rescue that received the small animals as part of the transfer. On August 31, HSSA's former CEO informed the HSSA board of the transfer, indicating the animals were safe and there was nothing for the board to worry about. On September 1 and 2, HSSA picked up 62 remaining animals from Apache Junction and processed their intake into the HSSA system. Over the next few weeks, the board began receiving communications from concerned employees and citizens, and it requested all relevant information from HSSA management. Due to the growing concerns expressed in the public and by employees, the board directed the commencement of an investigation into the small animal transfer during its September 26 board meeting. On September 29, the board is made aware of Colton Jones and the fertile turtle. An emergency board meeting is called, during which the CEO and the COO were questioned and thereafter suspended. After a preliminary report to the board by the investigator on October 4, the former CEO's employment was terminated, and the former COO's offer to resign was accepted. On September 29, the first of a series of text messages were sent to Colton Jones requesting information on whether the animals were safe. On October 1, he shared a handful of photos in his text message showing guinea pigs and rabbits being held by different individuals based on their clothes and other indicators. But no written verification was provided that supported they were the animals that were transferred to him or that they were adopted. Colton Jones denies animals were turned into animal feed. A text message uncovered by a KVOA reporter discredits this claim. The investigation continued for several weeks and concluded on November 11. Investigation conclusions. Documents and testimony supported Gonzalez was the sole organizer of the small animal transfer and made the specific decision to transfer the animals to Colton Jones. Farley was aware of the transfer well before it happened and voiced his support for it. Farley did not know beforehand that the animals would be sent to Colton Jones. SDHS reasonably believed Gonzalez would tap into HSSA's network using various community resources and groups to adopt out the small animals. SDHS had no meaningful reason to believe the small animals would be transferred to only one rescue, much less to Colton Jones. Although there was some doubt regarding the total number of animals involved in the transfer, SDHS has confirmed that the number was 323. This is the most accurate number available, as HSSA did not count the animals upon their arrival in Tucson, and there is no reason to doubt the SDHS records and information. While no definitive evidence was found that Gonzalez or HSSA knew Colton Jones intended to freeze the small animals for sale at a reptile show, the text message discovered by KVOA investigative reporter Corus Nylander creates a reasonable belief Jones may have used some of the animals for those purposes. This incident was the result of a failure of leadership to conduct due diligence in exploring and understanding the magnitude of accepting such an unusually large animal transfer from a sister organization. It also suffered from a lack of communication, assumptions on what was being asked of the team, and the absence of the CEO in directly managing such an undertaking. Furthermore, policies were either sidestepped or ignored, and proper research into what rescues HSSA works with was not done. It is also worth noting that the environment and culture at HSSA, as established by the former CEO, fostered a sense of get it done in how directives were carried out, with the former COO having a history of doing just that and assuming there was a directive in this instance. Finally, employees feared for their jobs, having been told that if they didn't bring intake numbers up, cuts might be possible. This working environment can lead to taking shortcuts and not following protocols. Recommendations to the board. Based on this investigation, I have developed a significant number of recommendations that I grouped into 7 categories for consideration and implementation. The board recommendations include 1, update and improve HSSA policies and practice, comprehensive review and redrafting of policy around animal transfer to qualified rescues, including defining minimum acceptable standards for qualification as a rescue, data collection, prohibition on sharing outside of the organization, communication channels, and decision-making checks and balances. 2, set new standard for comprehensive staff literacy. All staff training on appropriate shelter practices and standards to create baseline understanding of shelter practices as supported by national standards and licensing requirements to foster literacy and reinforce culture and practice. 3, improve control over data. Address database security even in the new system that is in the process of implementation, and retrain all staff on their obligations as staff members to keep internal information confidential, keep accurate information in the database, and to follow all HSSA policies for accessing confidential and proprietary information. 4, informed recruitment for next CEO. Board consideration of staff requests to be included in the recruitment process for both the new CEO and the new programs director from the beginning, and to require prior animal shelter experience as a minimum qualification. An optimal choice would be 1 member from the medical staff and 1 member of the shelter staff from both intake and adoptions. 5, change SSA policy for staff concerns reporting. Redraft HSSA employee policy manual to include an allowance and protection for staff to go directly to the board when concerns are related to the CEO or the welfare of the organization. 6, improve board literacy. Board training on HSSA updated, improved policies around intake, adoptions, transfers, and partner organizations for their own literacy and for informed performance management of the CEO. And 7, improve board oversight. Board development of a template for the CEO report to the board during each board meeting, where minimum standards for information and update are established in practice on a regular and ongoing basis.
Thank you, Terry. Everyone at HSSA continues to grieve over this incident and the likely status of the small animals that were not returned to us. This investigation has clearly identified weaknesses within HSSA that must be addressed quickly to regain the trust we know has been lost in the community and with our supporters. As you know, the board immediately took action upon learning of the involvement of Colton Jones and his operation, holding former leadership accountable for their respective actions and inactions, separating them from HSSA, and initiating an independent investigation to determine how we got to where we are. We've hired an interim CEO who is highly experienced with turnaround efforts to evaluate HSSA from stem to stern and to provide an assessment of where we can improve our operations. To date, the board is very pleased with our interim CEO's efforts, and we are receiving very positive feedback on her actions from our staff and the community. You'll be hearing more from Beth on progress made to date later. We've conducted a large number of listening and learning sessions with employees, volunteers, and community members to assess their concerns and identify opportunities for improving relationships and the culture at HSSA. We continue to work cooperatively with the San Diego Humane Society, our sister organization, as well. In addition to the recommendations provided by Terry, the board will stand up a new board ad hoc search committee to work with a professional search firm, which HSSA has already retained, to vet a new CEO who must have significant animal welfare experience. We intend to complete this process and hire a new permanent CEO within 6 months. The search committee will be composed of board members, employees, volunteers, supporters, and members of the public. The board is in the process of amending its bylaws to create a permanent, formal, and direct channel of communications between the board and a nascent non-management employee committee representative of all HSSA staff. The board will implement a robust response and investigation process for a new workplace ethics hotline through which employees and volunteers can make anonymous reports that will go directly to key board members. With input from staff and the public, the board will play an integral part in revamping HSSA's humane euthanasia policies to ensure each and every act of humane euthanasia that takes place at HSSA is beyond reproach. The board will work with interim leadership, HSSA staff, and experts in the field to revamp all policies relating to animal intake and animal transfers in and out of HSSA and implement reasonable but strong enforcement mechanisms. The board will implement new HR policies that require biannual 360 reviews of all employees in chief and director positions and support the implementation of revised HSSA employee and volunteer manuals. The board will continue meaningful and productive engagement with all internal and external stakeholders. And finally, HSSA continues to coordinate efforts with SDHS toward bringing a civil legal action against one or more individuals involved with this tragedy. Because of the legal sensitivities, I cannot provide more details on such efforts at this time. All of us who are part of HSSA who are supported in one way or another, whether it be through employment, volunteering, donations, or otherwise, consider it a high duty to care for vulnerable animals. HSSA exists primarily to save those vulnerable animals. Due to the actions and inactions of a small number of people, HSSA's life-saving work and dedication to animals, and that of the San Diego Humane Society, has been called into question. Please do not judge the work of our organizations by this one dark chapter in our histories. Please do not, based on this tragic instance alone, judge the passionate and dedicated employees and volunteers who work tirelessly every day in service to vulnerable animals. HSSA can't undo the past. What we can do is implement the right solutions to strengthen the organization and make it better in providing for the needs of animals and our community. We are committed to doing this. We are committed to being better, and we look to our community for support and patience as we do the hard work of rebuilding trust and setting up HSSA for success in the future. Now I'd like to introduce Beth Morrison, our interim CEO, to talk about the actions underway at the administrative and operations levels.
Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I would like to also express my heartache and that of our staff for the animals that have likely been lost to this because of this incident. We are committed to doing whatever it takes to ensure an animal never experiences such an outcome again, and that HSSA moves forward with the right tools to continue to serve the thousands of animals that come into our care each year. In the past 6 weeks, we focused on evaluating HSSA's administration and operations across many fronts, not only with respect to the small animal transfer, but also for the organization as a whole. Our actions include hiring a new and highly respected and experienced interim chief programs officer, Jose Ocano, who starts next week. Using his extensive animal welfare expertise, Jose's immediate priority will be to conduct a critical overview and assessment of all programs and review and update standard operating procedures, starting with policies related to animal transfers. All HSSA programs and policies will, to the extent they do not already, be reformed to reflect industry best standards. A review of HR processes, including reporting structures and employee tools, including the employee handbook and management performance review processes, is underway. Addressing and resolving issues with HSSA's IT structure, primarily with respect to the animal service database. A full review of all financial policies and practices. Working to fill critical leadership gaps, including those in HR, development, animal welfare, and the C-suite. Committing to forging a strong partnership with the Pima Animal Care Center so that PAC and HSSA can work together to save more animals and to serve our community. Rest assured that HSSA staff, the board, and I take very seriously the need to improve and to ensure that history does not repeat itself. We have and will continue to learn from past mistakes. HSSA is a pillar in the community, and that's one of the reasons I agreed to undertake the role of interim CEO during such a difficult time. A smaller or diminished HSSA serves no one and would likely result only in the loss of lives worthy of dignity and protection. We cannot and will not let this happen.
Thank you, Beth. In 2024, HSSA will celebrate its 80th year of life-saving work. During that time, together with the Southern Arizona community, HSSA has saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of animals. We look forward to saving millions more in the future and ask for the ongoing support of our community to accomplish this. At this time, Terry, Beth, and I will take a few questions. Please use the raise hand feature to let us know if you have questions, and we'll call on you in order. Thank you. And if you could also, when I call on you, if you could also let us know who your question is for, and then we'll go from there. So I see Shelby Slaughter, if you could turn on your camera and go ahead and ask your question. Hi, Shelby.
Hi, everyone. So I have a couple questions, and I'll just ask them both just to keep this rolling. My first question is for anyone who has the answer to this. We called this press conference one day after Giving Tuesday. We had it 2 days after Giving Tuesday. Was that purposeful, A? And 2, how much money was raised on Giving Tuesday, and how was that in comparison to years past?
So I think with respect to years past and how that worked, I'll go to Beth and then I'll have a comment on that as well.
Sure. I'm happy to answer the question. First, I guess I'd like to say that every day for a nonprofit is a giving day. Donations is what keeps organizations such as, donations from the community is what keeps organizations such as HSSA able to do the work that we do. Fundraising has continued throughout this entire process because we can't stop. We have animals in our care right now who need care and need services, medical care, shelter, to be adopted. And so we've continued fundraising. We raised a little over $25,000 on Giving Tuesday, with some money continuing to trickle in, which typically happens for several days after and kind of blends into the giving season. So it's sometimes hard to totally pinpoint it to that particular event. And we were really grateful for what came in. We had a number of new donors who chose to make contributions to us, and many people who've supported us for a number of years. So we're rather pleased with the results of our Giving Tuesday.
And one more question, and this is mainly for Terry, I believe. I had a couple sources with HSSA provide me with a screenshot. I printed it out, but I don't know if you can see it with my blurred background. I believe I sent it to Mary so that she could give it to you. It was a screenshot of several animals that were transferred to Colton Jones back in 2021, which was interesting because the board had said that they didn't learn about Colton Jones until September 29th. So I guess I was curious why that wasn't mentioned in the report, and what that all meant there. And I have this screenshot. I'd be more than happy to send it to you. I know Mary said she was supposed to send it to you about a month ago.
I'm unaware of that, and the details in the report are much more bountiful than in the executive summary that I just read. So it's possible that the answer to your question is in the details of the report. I don't know the screenshot you're referring to. So if I could take a look at it, I'd certainly be better able to respond to that more precisely.
And I can respond further to that, Shelby. Yes, we have become aware that Colton Jones was in the animal adoptions database for some time, but that's quite a different. There's quite a distinction there between his name being in the animal services database and the board knowing about it. The board did not learn about him or his involvement whatsoever until September 29th, period.
And just, I'd like to clarify, the reason I didn't pass that on, Shelby, is because there had already been a list of the history of the Jones brothers that had been pulled and provided to the investigator.
That is in the report, Shelby, the history of the Jones adoptions with HSSA in detail.
Can you PM me your email address? So that way we can connect offline so I can show you what I have. I just want to make sure it's factual.
I'd be happy to go ahead.
Thanks, Terry. Chorus, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I guess I have a few questions, but first off, I believe it was mentioned in your initial press conference that there would be some form of an audit done, on HSSA employees involved in this. To what extent has any financial auditing been done? And are there any plans to get an actual CPA in here to look at the possibility that any money exchanged hands or there was any sort of financial influences in this occurrence?
Horace, we have no reason to believe that there was any money whatsoever paid to HSSA in connection with the events that occurred. Whether there was some money exchanged with others who were involved, Terry's report actually speaks to that with respect to Christian Gonzalez. But at this point, I'm not sure I understand the question, but we don't at this point see the need for any sort of financial audit of HSSA to determine whether there was monies received from Colton Jones or the Fertile Turtle or anything along those lines. At this point, we're quite confident that there was never any money received by HSSA from those individuals.
At this point, and I'm sure maybe she gets into it in the report, but what what would the motivations be to even be involved in something like this? What would HSSA's end be in providing Jones animals?
Perry, you want to go ahead and field that as far as what the potential motivation may have been to the extent that you may have some info on it?
Well, I hope I understand your question clearly, Chorus. Respectfully, I can't speculate beyond what was supported between what people told me and the kinds of emails and text messages they provided that created alignment so that I could rely on what they were telling me. Nothing in any of the information that I was able to collect supported financial gain going any direction, quite honestly. And in the report, go ahead, please.
What did it support? You know, on the many interviews you did, which I'm sure you probably get it more in depth into, but I haven't seen all of that yet. What did it support on all the conversations you've had? Why did this happen? Why do you think this happened?
In the report, it's pretty clear that it was considered an act of goodwill between sister organizations, and the communication issues, like I referred to in my executive summary, pardon me, that I referred to in my executive summary really was breaks in communication or an absence of clarity. So assumptions were made that this was a good thing and that it should be done to help a sister organization.
It was just brought up a little bit ago about the history in the past of dealing with the Jones family. Steve Farley told me himself in my initial interviews with him that they've had about a 10-year or so relationship with the Jones. They didn't name Jones at the time, but with this at the time, it was a private rescue. Are you looking back at those previous, I understand they're much smaller, but the previous business that HSSA has done with the Jones family to make sure everything was on the up and up at those points in time?
Yes, and that actually touches on Shelby's question, which is what was the history? I was provided with the actual adoption documents that were related to any previous adoptions with the Jones family, the brothers, and I believe it goes back to 2010, and it's listed in detail in the report.
Got you. And a source of mine tells me that, you know, they're aware of your investigation, and they claim that you had said that it was listed as Trevor Jones in the background documents that you have, that Trevor Jones received these animals and that it was switched to Colton Jones after the fact. Is that true? Was there any going in the records and changing names?
There's nothing that supports there was a deliberate changing of any names. It's just that there seemed to be a little bit of interchangeability. Even if you look at the details in the report, you'll see both in there.
Gotcha. But there was a change, whether deliberate or not?
There is no indication that there were any deliberate changes on which one, Trevor or Colton.
But do you know which one of them received the animals?
I believe it was on the 7th was Colton.
It was said in the first press conference that HSSA delivered the pets to a Trevor Jones. So why was there that, I'll call it a miscommunication or misunderstanding of who actually received these animals up front? Because it was put out there publicly that it was Trevor Jones that you guys knew received the animals.
I was going to say, go ahead, Robert.
I can address that if you're referring to the October 4th press conference.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay. So at that point in time, we were spinning up this investigation and trying to determine who was involved. We understood, based upon information provided by former management, that Trevor Jones was involved. And at that point, we relied on that information, and as more facts came to light and we knew that there was a greater involvement by Colton Jones, that's when it got switched to referring almost exclusively to Colton Jones. So our statements have always been based upon the information that was provided to us either by former management or the best information that we otherwise had. But as you know, we learn things as we go, and we have to adjust and revise over the process. So that's what we've done, and that's why there was a change in the name.
Understood. And what about a criminal investigation? I know you guys met with, I believe it was the Tucson Police Department. You have a case number open there. Have they told you anything on their end? If this is a case they'll take, if there's any potential criminal violations, or are you just stuck pursuing a civil action?
So we've asked the Tucson Police Department to look into the issue, and I understand that they are triaging the investigation and that they're going to look into it. We look forward to hearing from them further and cooperating with them in every way that we can. And to the extent that they want to pursue any sort of criminal actions together with the prosecutor's office, we will support that.
And lastly here, are you aware of where this drop-off, this handing over of these pets actually took place? Any indication it was in Apache Junction?
We do know the exact location where the drop-off took place, yes.
And where is that?
We have the address, and I don't have the address off the top of my head.
Was it in Apache Junction?
I believe so. There were, including Mr. Gonzalez, there were 3 HSSA employees who went there, and the 2 remaining HSSA employees who were also interviewed by Terry also spoke to the location and where they were delivered. So we do know where the animals were taken, and we do know where they were picked up by HSSA several weeks later.
Those other employees, and I'll wrap it up here from my end, those other employees, did they do anything wrong? Were they reprimanded, or, what is your belief for their involvement?
We have no reason to believe those employees did anything wrong. They were following instructions.
Understood. Thank you.
Looks like Shelby has another question.
3 more questions and then I'm done. Terry, in your investigation, was any money ever exchanged from 2010 to now between the HSSA and either of the Jones brothers?
The documents that were provided to me were straight up adoption records. So I don't have them in front of me, but those are records that belong to the HSSA. And off the top of my head, I don't recall anything beyond like the nominal adoption fees, which they would have had to pay to adopt the animals.
So the Jones brothers would have had to pay for for each animal?
Like in any adoption. I don't have the records in front of me to speak with accuracy on that, but they were treated as regular adoptions.
Robert, can you weigh in on that and tell me how much a regular adoption is for a rat or a guinea pig then?
Oh, I don't know what the adoption fee would have been for a rat or a guinea pig historically. I'm sorry, I just don't know that information.
So just to clarify, it is fair to say that the Jones brothers did pay for these 300 some animals.
No, it is not fair to characterize that at all. I don't know why. No, we're not saying at all.
I was referring to the historical records where they
Okay.
were treated as adoptions going back from 2010, and those were much smaller batches of discrete times and dates and animals.
And I
Okay,
think
so
also, Shelby, if you can, what Terry, I think, is trying to convey to you is that based on our records, prior adoptions that involved the Joneses, we can't tell you at this point, because we don't know the answer off the top of our heads, whether adoption fees were paid for the prior adoptions or the prior animals that were taken. What we can tell you with certainty now is that the Joneses, or Colton Jones, did not pay HSSA any money for the small animals that were transferred in August.
okay. Thank you for clarifying. Last question. I know that in the press conference, we just talked about board literacy for the future. Was it common in the past for the board to have a hand in the system and know what these transfers looked like? Or does the board in the past, did you guys just not know about the system and what that looked like? And that's why you weren't aware of the Jones family?
The board is not aware of each and every adopter that interfaces or interacts with HSSA. So there are thousands every year. So the answer to that is no. The board is not aware of the identity of each and every adopter. Now, with respect to the board's involvement, The board has in the past been much more involved in the organization and its management. In prior years, HSSA was managed by 3 chiefs who co-shared power. And at that point, it required the board to be much more involved in day-to-day management. The board several years ago, and which led to the hiring of our former CEO, decided that that structure was not benefiting the organization and moved to a strong CEO model. In a strong CEO model, a board of directors is not in on the day-to-day. So we would not have been made aware of transfers in and out of the organization. In the future, we will be, because that's something that we're going to impose upon HSSA and its management now and in the future, to secure approval from the board for animal transfers in and out above a certain number. Looks like NBC7 has a question.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Apologies if this is repetitive, but we're out here in San Diego, so we're not as in-depth involved in this story, but obviously trying to stay up to date and get the most information. So in HHSA's opinion, where are those 300 plus animals now? I know this has been addressed, but I'm just asking like officially what that opinion is as of today, and how did the Jones brothers benefit from something like this?
What is your name, please?
What?
What was your name, please?
Jackie Crea. Apologies.
Jackie, thanks for your question. So as far as the fate of the animals, the 250 or so that were not returned to HSSA, based upon the text messages and the information that we've received, the only reasonable thing we can conclude at this point, in the absence of more information, is that the animals were used in an inappropriate manner as feed.
As feed.
Now, it appears that the intention was for those animals to be frozen and then used as feed for other animals. That's the information that's before us, and you know, in the absence of contradicting information, I don't know what else we could reasonably believe.
Right.
With respect to 62 animals who were returned to HSSA, those animals are now in the hands of other rescue organizations that we have confidence in and that were vetted, and they were otherwise adopted out. So those 62, we are, those 62, we believe and are in good hands with members of the public and other rescue organizations. The 250 that were not, again, we're very saddened by the likely outcome.
Okay. And if, as discussed before, there was no transfer of money or anything like that, no financial gain, so why would this happen? What is the benefit in terms of like from a vendor's point of view when they were participating in all of this? Obviously, uncovered to be with malintent, but
based upon the text message that was uncovered, it appears that the intention was to freeze the animals and then to sell them at some sort of industry show that was taking place in California. Whether there was some financial benefit that arose from that, we don't know that. And that's something that we are going to look into as potential further actions develop.
is it a bigger problem? I know one of the other reporters asked, has this been, something in the past, maybe retroactively going through some of those records? We know they were in the database, the Jones brothers. Is this a bigger issue?
So they were in the database, and the prior number, the number of animals that were previously adopted or transferred to these individuals in the past is somewhere around, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere around 10 or 12 in total. What has made this so much, what what has made this so difficult for all of us is the sheer number, and that the number on its own should have caused great alarm to our former management team.
Can this kind of action be lucrative? Last question. I mean, in terms of, your expert opinion and being involved in this industry, what kind of financial gain are we talking here that would make, a vendor think they could possibly get away with it, or it was worth more money than keeping, their jobs? I mean, do you understand what I'm asking?
We don't have any information on that, on what the potential upside would have been financially for the individuals involved. But that, if civil legal actions move forward, then that's something that we're going to be able to determine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? We'll pause for a moment. All right, well, if there are no other questions, thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Recording stopped.